Skillshare is a great place to learn new skills and pursue the work you love. This is the Samsung Galaxy S2, released in April 2011, which, funnily enough, is the exact month I started this channel. Alright, so I managed to get this guy off eBay. It is still sealed. It does at least look like a genuine seal. If someone has tampered with this, well, props to them, they've done a pretty good job. The contents feel a little bit loose inside, but that could either be it was poorly shipped to me, or maybe phones were just less well packaged a few years ago. It says we've got 1080p Full HD over here, which of course is referring to the camera of the phone being able to record 1080p. The screen itself is far from it, and actually there's something really quite interesting about the phone's display, which we'll get onto in a couple of minutes. But first of all, a change of scenery. Alright, let's quickly start with the box, which is absolutely tiny by the way, and not particularly easy to open. That's definitely something that has been improved with later iterations. The phone is on top, and below that we've got pretty much all the standard stuff. We've got an instruction manual, but curiously enough, the charger that's included in here looks identical to the one featured on the Galaxy S8. We've got a micro USB cable, and some pretty decent included earphones. But more importantly, the phone itself. This is a smartphone that back in 2011 absolutely killed it. This was the king of all smartphones with a dual-core processor, AMOLED display. This really was the one to go for. But in 2018, pretty much the minute you take this phone out the box, a lot of things become very apparent very quickly. First of all, I guess the thing which I first noticed was how square the phone is in almost every aspect. Not just the display or the corners of the display, but in fact, almost every part of the body of this phone. You flip it over, the camera module, even the camera itself. You flip it back over, the home button. It's almost devoid of the curves that embody every 2018 phone. So the Galaxy S2 runs Android 4.1.2 Jelly Bean. It started off at 2.3 but has since been updated, and you notice pretty quickly scrolling through it that the software lacks refinement. It feels like it was designed for a kid's toy with its dark menus and bold, bright application colours. This has definitely been improved over time. Because we're now so used to capacitive on-screen home buttons, it was unusual to see that this one has to be physically pressed in before it registers. Of course, there's also no dedicated multitasking key. This is before that time, and to activate multitasking, you've got to hold down the home button. So as I said at the beginning, the Galaxy S2 is quite a fascinating subject in 2018, not least because of its display. This actually has a 5:3 aspect ratio, something we've not heard of in quite a few years. This is before 16:9 became the standard. So it is a very squashed display, which barely fits any content on compared to modern day 18:9, or in this case 18.5:9 aspect ratios. It's also, as you can probably tell by the side-by-side, got a criminally green and yellow tinge to it. It cannot display whites even close to correctly. Now this is still a Super AMOLED display, technically speaking the same technology that's still being used 6-7 years on, but a combination of this lack of color accuracy, lack of brightness, and significant lack of resolution means it's a world apart. Another striking aspect is that the phone is almost completely made of plastic. It wasn't until a couple of years later that manufacturers really started to embrace glass and metal as their main materials, so at the time this was perfectly acceptable. And on one hand, you're kind of reminded of some of the benefits of having a plastic body. For example, the phone is incredibly light, it's got a removable back, and hence a removable battery too, which is something we used to have a few years ago, but has since completely disappeared. It also means it doesn't attract as many fingerprints as these glass fingerprint magnets. But at the same time, of course, you really do miss the premium feel of current gen flagships. In a way, the finish on the back of this phone is quite similar to that of the Huawei P10, just that one is metal, this one is plastic. They also share a transition from this matte surface into a glossier one, but again, the Huawei one is glass, but the Samsung is plastic again. So whilst this phone is not really what we expect now, it has a positive appeal of its own. Whereas its successors have opted for luxury, for class, for sophistication in their smartphone bodies, the Galaxy S2 sports something that is comfortable, that is practical, that visually is a little bit more unique. You'll also notice on the back of the phone, on this little lip it has that sticks out, a really poorly placed speaker grill, which gets instantly muffled when you put the phone down on any flat surface. And after going back to something like this, you can definitely see why companies put speakers on the bottom or the fronts of their phones now. Whilst the Galaxy S2 was famously powerful at the time of release, using it now, it feels really bad. and it's probably a combination of increased expectations, but also Samsung's updates. A lot of people have claimed that some of their updates have slowed down older phones to encourage people to upgrade. Battery life is also criminally poor here, and my suspicion is it's for similar reasons. And don't forget, this phone takes nearly 3 hours to fully charge, which is about double the time of a 2018 phone, and of course you have no chance of any wireless charging. It would be pretty unfair to pitch the camera on this phone against that of any phone released in the past few years, but safe to say improvements have definitely been made, and moving back to something like this is a pretty humbling experience. The shutter time is slow, it cannot focus on objects that are very close, detail is poor, colours are washed out, and of course it lacks a lot of the features we really like using now, which require 2 cameras like portrait mode and lossless zooming. Alright guys, if you haven't already seen my video on the Samsung flagship phone you haven't considered, do check it out, I'll leave it as a card above. Alright, so as I said, this video was sponsored by Skillshare. Now, this is basically an online learning community. It's got more than 17,000 classes in design, photo, and more. The premium membership gives you unlimited access to the high quality classes from experts in their fields, so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. For example, I tried the DSLR photography class, and through watching this series of videos, I learned how to better frame my photos, as well as adjust exposure to get the right shot. It's also not an expensive service. You can get it for $10 a month if you get an annual subscription, and the first 3 months for 99 cents. Anyway guys, the link is in the description below, so be sure to check it out. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'm signing out.